What happens when the man who built the business from nothing walks into one of his own cafes and sees the kind of behavior he swore he'd never allow? Graham Booker stood outside the cafe on 8th and Willow just past 10:30 p.m., wearing a faded hoodie, ripped jeans, and a pair of thick glasses. He hadn't shaved in 4 days, and his old Ford truck was parked around the corner. No one would recognize the founder and CEO of the 9-location cafe chain like this, not even close. He pulled out the fake application form he'd used. Brent, it read. New hire. Overnight trainee. The perfect excuse to work a shift without raising eyebrows. This was one of the locations he hadn't been to in over a year. A few customer complaints had trickled in long wait times, rude service, but nothing major. Still, something didn't sit right. The late shift especially. His gut told him to stop relying on reports and see it for himself. Inside, the place was quiet. 2 customers sat near the back, sipping coffee. The warm yellow lighting gave the illusion of calm. Behind the counter, a tall guy with a messy bun leaned lazily against the espresso machine, scrolling his phone. Yo, you the new guy? He asked without looking up. Graham nodded. Yeah. Brent. Starting tonight, I guess. The guy glanced over him.
Cool. I'm Tyler.
Just hang out. You don't gotta do much. Gab'll show you whatever. He didn't ask for ID. Didn't hand him a schedule. Just turned back to his phone. A few minutes later, a short girl with dark braids walked out from the back room carrying a tray of stacked mugs. Seriously, Tyler? She said sharply. You still haven't cleaned the counters? The floors are sticky. Tyler just shrugged. Relax. Brent's here now. She turned to Graham. First night? All right, I'll show you around. Her name tag read, Gabriela O'Neill. She looked tired but focused. Her smile was tight, like someone used to being ignored. As she led him through the kitchen procedures, he noticed her checking over everything twice. Wiping counters Tyler hadn't touched. Restocking milk. Apologizing to customers over things she didn't cause. She's been doing everything, Graham thought. This guy barely moves. 2 hours in, and it became obvious. Gabriela was holding the place together. Tyler and another guy named Chris, who showed up late without explanation, barely did anything unless she asked 3 times. And even then, they'd laugh, roll their eyes, or do it halfway. At one point, Gabriela asked Chris to take out the trash. You take it out, Chris said, smirking. You're the one who likes doing all the dirty work. Graham saw her jaw tighten. Seriously, just can you help out? She said quietly.
Chris laughed.
Calm down, Gabby. You get so emotional. No wonder no one wants to close with you. Tyler chuckled under his breath. Graham's stomach turned. It kept going. Every task she asked them for became a joke. They'd whisper behind her back, mimicking her voice. When she passed by, Chris muttered, Here comes Bossy again. She kept her head down and kept working, but her hands shook when she poured drinks. She dropped a cup once and whispered, Damn, under her breath before quickly cleaning it up. By 2 a.m., Gabriela was restocking the pastry case alone while Chris and Tyler sat in the break room with their feet up. Graham followed her into the kitchen. You okay? He asked gently, keeping his cover. She looked surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, just tired. She glanced toward the break room. It's always like this. They don't listen to me. I tell the manager, but she says it's just guy stuff and to ignore it. Have you told the district manager? Gabriela shook her head. I've never even met them. I've been here 6 months, and I barely got trained. Graham felt something twist in his chest. That's not okay. She gave him a tired smile. It's fine. I'm used to it. He stayed quiet. Waited. Then she added, They don't like that I care. That I try to do things right. They say I act better than them. I don't. I just want to do a good job. He nodded. You are. When she turned back to her task, Graham stepped outside for air. His hands trembled with anger. He'd built this company to be different, to be fair, to give people a workplace where they mattered. Instead, he just watched one of his employees get worn down by two lazy, disrespectful guys while management looked the other way. And no one knew he was the one who owned the whole damn place. But they'd find out soon. He wasn't leaving until things changed. By 3:15 in the morning, the cafe had gone quiet again, save for the low hiss of the espresso machine and the occasional click of the drive-through headset that no one bothered to pick up. Graham had watched that happen twice now, a car pulling up, waiting, then driving off without a word from inside. Tyler was sitting at the far end of the counter, tossing sugar packets into a cold cup, missing most of the time. Chris was reclined in the corner booth, earbuds in, occasionally mouthing lyrics to himself. Gabriela was wiping down the milk frother for the third time when Graham stepped beside her, pretending to rearrange the coffee lids. "You're not supposed to be alone out here, right?" he asked quietly. She didn't look up this time.
No.
"But if I wait for them, it doesn't get done." He nodded slowly, watching the backroom door swing open again. Tyler walked out, stretched like he'd just woken from a nap, and made a show of yawning. "Yo, Gabby," he said with a grin. "You missed a spot under the counter. Want me to get you a flashlight?"
She didn't respond.
Just kept scrubbing. Graham stepped in. "I can check it." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Easy, newbie. Don't get too eager. You'll make the rest of us look bad." He turned and walked off before either of them could respond. A few minutes later, Gabriela moved to the register to count the till. Graham followed the sound of a cupboard slamming and found Chris by the dry storage shelves, balancing a muffin box on top of a stack of paper cups. "You need something?" Chris asked, not looking at him.
No.
"Just seeing if anything needs restocking." Chris let out a dry laugh. "You know, you don't have to impress her. She's not a manager." "I didn't say I was trying to impress anyone." Chris finally looked at him. "Seriously, man. Do what we do. Keep your head down, don't overwork, and let her burn herself out. She likes being the hero. Let her." Graham didn't respond. He just turned and walked back out to the front. By 4, Gabriela was dragging a mop bucket across the floor, one hand pressed to her lower back. Tyler was leaning on the counter, watching a video on his phone. Chris had disappeared again. Graham took the mop from her without asking. She blinked, startled. "You don't have to, I know." For a few minutes, they worked side by side in silence. Then she spoke. "I used to love this job," she said quietly. "I liked the pace, the customers. I liked that it felt like my work mattered." He paused, keeping his eyes on the floor. "What changed?" "They stopped scheduling the team I trained with. Hired people who didn't care.
And management just
let it slide. I tried to keep things going, but it's like swimming upstream every night." She stepped around him, rinsed the mop in the bucket. "I've thought about quitting. More than once." "Why haven't you?" She hesitated. "I guess I keep hoping someone will notice." The words hit hard. At 5:20, the assistant manager, a woman in her late 30s named Lana, showed up for the morning prep. She walked in with a coffee from a different cafe chain in hand, sunglasses still on. "Morning," she said flatly, dropping her bag behind the counter. Gabriela offered a polite nod. Tyler raised his hand in a lazy wave. Chris reappeared from the back, rubbing his eyes. "Rough night?" Lana asked, setting her drink next to the register. Tyler laughed. "Not really." Gabby had it handled. Lana grinned. "As always." She turned to Gabriela. "You're such a perfectionist, girl. One of these days you're gonna just drop from exhaustion." Gabriela smiled faintly, saying nothing. Graham stayed quiet, watching. Lana pulled out the schedule clipboard and frowned.
"Wait.
"Why are you still here, Gabby? Weren't you supposed to clock out half an hour ago?" "I had to finish inventory. And the lobby hadn't been mopped yet." Lana waved her off. "You need to learn to let some things go." This isn't a hospital. No one's dying. Graham watched the expression on Gabriela's face flatten. He checked the time. 5:31. Time to end this. He stepped forward, removed his glasses, and pulled the hoodie back. Lana looked up confused. Sorry, Graham said calmly. Change of plans. Lana blinked. I'm sorry, who are you?
I'm Graham Booker.
The room went still. Chris froze near the pastry case. Tyler sat up properly for the first time all night. Gabriela's eyes widened, then immediately flicked to the floor. Lana gave an unsteady laugh. Wait, like, the owner? He nodded. That's right. The silence that followed was deep and immediate. I've been here all night, he said, voice low but steady, watching how this shift operates. Watching how Gabriela carries the weight of 3 people while the rest of you either disappear or stand around. Watching how she's spoken to.
How she's dismissed.
And how none of it gets corrected. Lana opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. Don't. I've seen enough. He turned to Chris. You told a coworker to handle trash because she likes doing dirty work. You mocked her when she asked for help. I saw you ignore customers and vanish for hours. Chris shifted his weight. I didn't mean anything by it. You're done here. Effective immediately. Chris's mouth fell open. He looked to Lana, who didn't meet his eyes. Graham turned to Tyler. You spent the night leaning on counters and throwing sugar packets. You ignored customers in the drive-thru. You laughed when your coworker was being harassed. Tyler gave a tight shrug. I didn't think it was that serious.
It was.
And you're also done here. Graham turned to Lana last. You walked in drinking coffee from a competitor. You mocked your own employee for working too hard. And from what I've been told, you've been ignoring reports of mistreatment and dismissing concerns. Lana flushed. Okay, I could have been more involved, but you're the assistant manager. Could have been isn't good enough. You're being suspended pending a full review. Don't come in until you hear from HR. She opened her mouth again, but the look on his face stopped her. Graham turned to Gabriela. I'm sorry, he said gently, for letting this go on, for not seeing it sooner. She stared at him, stunned. You shouldn't have had to carry this store by yourself, he continued. You shouldn't have had to ask for basic respect 10 different ways and be ignored every time. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't think anyone would believe me.
Ido.
He pulled out his phone. Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, someone from corporate will call to talk about a promotion. If you're willing, I want you to help rebuild the night team here. You know what this place should be, and I trust your judgment. Gabriela blinked hard, mouth trembling slightly. She nodded once and walked to the back to gather her things. Graham stood in the middle of the café, watching the faces of the people who thought no one was watching. Then he turned toward the door, not saying another word as he stepped into the early morning light. Graham returned to the café 2 days later, this time through the front doors, wearing a pressed button-down and a plain black jacket.
No disguise, no glasses.
It was just past 9 in the evening, close enough to the overnight transition to see how things were settling after the shakeup. The store was quieter than before. A couple sitting near the window looked up as he entered, then went back to their drinks. The atmosphere felt tentative, like the room hadn't exhaled yet. At the counter, a young woman with short auburn hair greeted him with a small, uncertain smile.
Hi, welcome.
Looking for anything in particular? He glanced at her name tag Mindy. Just a coffee.
Black.
And I'm here to meet Gabriela. Mindy's expression eased a little. She's in the back. I'll let her know. He stepped aside, watching the floor. The sticky patches he'd seen 2 nights ago were gone. Tables were wiped clean. No clutter. The pace was still slow, but it felt like someone had started turning the ship. Gabriela emerged a moment later, wearing a clean apron and tying her hair back with a rubber band. She looked tired but composed. like someone who'd been running uphill and finally found a flat stretch. She stopped short when she saw him. "You came back." "I said I would." Mindy handed over his coffee and quietly returned to wiping the pastry cabinet. Gabriela motioned toward a booth near the back. "We can sit for a few minutes." "It's steady but slow." He followed her, setting his cup on the table. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded.
Better.
"Still catching up on sleep. And I've got 2 new hires starting tomorrow. One's from another location, the other's brand new." He leaned back. "You comfortable taking over the shift lead role?" There was a brief pause.
Yeah.
"I am." "It's a little strange." The first night after everything, it was just me and Mindy. Lana didn't show. She sent a text saying she needed time to process the situation. He raised an eyebrow. "HR's already processing her file. She won't be returning." Gabriela didn't look surprised. "Mindy's been stepping up. She's not super experienced, but she listens." "That's a huge difference already." "You'll have 1 more person from the temp pool until the new hires are fully trained." "I know it's not ideal, but I didn't want to rush the wrong people in. I'd rather train slow than repeat the last 6 months." He looked at her closely. "You sure you're up for this?" Her eyes didn't waver. "I don't want things to go back to how they were. If I can help stop that, I will." He nodded once. A young man in his early 20s came out from the back, adjusting his apron. He had a clipboard in hand and a nervous energy to his steps. "Gabby, quick question, do we stock the cold brew pitchers on the second shelf or the bottom now?"
Second, she said.
"Just make sure they're labeled." The man nodded and disappeared again. "New?" Graham asked. "Transferred in from the downtown location this evening. He's green, but he's trying. His name's Theo." A beat passed before she added, "He asked me if I preferred being called Gabriela or Gabby." That alone felt like a miracle. Graham gave a faint grin. "That should be standard." She gave a small laugh under her breath, then her face grew more serious. "I've been thinking about what you said, about rebuilding the team. I want to help, but I also want to make sure we don't just patch over the cracks. That's the goal. I have questions. Can I ask?" "Of course." She folded her hands. "First question, why didn't anyone from corporate ever visit this store at night?" He nodded slowly.
Fair.
The overnight shifts often treated like background noise. If numbers look decent and reports don't raise alarms, it's easy to overlook. That's on me. Second, if someone like me files a complaint, what's supposed to happen? It should go to the district manager, then to HR if it involves harassment. But clearly, that chain failed. She leaned in slightly. "Then how do we fix it?" He didn't answer right away. He didn't want to give her a polished line, he wanted to tell her what was already moving. "We're rewriting the reporting structure. Every employee will have direct access to an escalation contact outside their store. No more looping through unresponsive managers. And we're bringing in a third-party audit team to visit each location unannounced, especially during off hours." Gabriela looked down at the table for a moment, then back up. "That would have changed everything." "I know." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the fridge units filling the air. Then she asked, "Why did you come here yourself? You could have sent anyone." He looked her in the eye. "Because I built this place to be different. And somewhere along the line, I stopped checking if that was still true." She nodded, but didn't respond right away. "I don't want to be one of those people," he continued. "The ones who say all the right things at the top, then disappear. So you're going to see more of me. Not just in this location, across the board." "You mean Undercover again?" He gave a dry chuckle. "Hopefully not. But I'll be showing up. Unannounced. Sometimes to help. Sometimes just to listen." Gabriela tapped a knuckle on the table. "If you really mean that, it'll change a lot." The front bell jingled as 2 customers walked in. Mindy greeted them and started prepping a drink. Theo emerged again, this time with gloves on, heading toward the sink. Graham watched them for a moment. "You're building something here," he said. Gabriela stood. "I just want people to feel like their work matters." "It does. And so do you." She gave him a look that wasn't quite a smile, but it carried weight. Like trust being slowly rebuilt, one brick at a time. He rose and adjusted his jacket. "I'll check in next week. You'll have the final say on the next hires. And if anything feels off, you have my direct number." She nodded. "Don't worry. I'll use it." As he walked toward the door, the cafe didn't feel perfect, but it felt like a place recovering. A place where someone had finally said no. He stepped out into the night air, the sound of the door shutting behind him.
No fanfare. No annunciament.
Just a quiet promise kept. By the end of the second week, the night shift at the 8th and Willow Cafe looked different, not fixed, not flawless, but undeniably different. The tension that once sat in the air like fog had thinned. Customers still trickled in slowly during the overnight hours, but now someone always greeted them within seconds. The drive-through headset was picked up every time without fail. And most noticeably, Gabriela no longer looked like she was bracing for impact with every step. Graham arrived just past 10 on a Thursday night. He entered quietly, without warning, but no one looked surprised to see him. Word had gotten around he might show up, unannounced and quiet, but watching everything. Theo was behind the counter, wearing a clean apron and double-checking a box of drink sleeves. He nodded as Graham passed, then went back to what he was doing. Mindy was at the bar, measuring grounds into the portafilter. Gabriela stood near the register, going over temperature logs with a clipboard. "Looks like you've got things under control," Graham said. Gabriela looked up. "We're getting there." "You short-staffed tonight?" "One call out, but we planned ahead this time." Theo picked up an extra hour. She didn't need to explain further. He could see the different tasks weren't piling up and no one was standing around. He leaned against the counter. "How are the new hires working out?" Gabriela set the clipboard down. "We took on 2. One's solid, still learning, but asks questions, shows up early. The other didn't make it past the first weekend. Spent more time checking his phone than looking at the register screen." "What happened?" "I gave him a warning. He said I was being dramatic. I documented it and sent it up. HR let him go that same day." Graham nodded once.
"Good."
Gabriela paused. "I didn't think I'd be the one making that kind of call." "You earned it." He glanced toward the pastry display. The case was stocked, labeled, and spotless. Nothing expired, nothing out of place. Customers noticing the changes? Regulars are. One of them said it feels like a different place. Another asked if we got new ownership. That's a compliment and a warning. She folded her arms lightly. "We're holding the line. But the hard part isn't the work. It's keeping the momentum." He looked at her carefully. "What do you need to keep it?" Gabriela hesitated. "Honestly, a clear path. Something beyond just 'you're doing great.' I don't want to manage this shift forever. I want to grow, but I don't want to wake up 5 years from now still stocking syrup bottles at 2 in the morning." "You shouldn't have to." He pulled out a folder from his bag and opened it on the counter. "This is a development track we're starting to roll out. It's designed for team leads who've proven themselves, but never got a real shot. It includes cross-training at other locations, mentorship meetings with regional ops, and, if it goes well, placement in a full assistant manager role within 6 months." Gabriela looked down at the pages. "Is this real, or something that sounds good on paper?" "It's already funded. You'd be in the first wave." She didn't answer immediately. "I'm in," she said finally. "But I want to keep working nights until the shift is fully stable. I don't want to bolt as soon as it looks better." He nodded. "That's your call. You'll have support either way." From the back, Theo called out, "Hey, Gabriela? Can you take a look at the line cleaner? I think I mixed the dilution ratio wrong." She called back, "Be there in a sec," then looked at Graham. He's still learning, she said, but he wants to know when he's wrong. That's more than I can say for most people I've worked with. Keep him close, Graham said. That attitude's rare. She grabbed the clipboard and headed toward the back, already shifting into problem-solving mode. Graham stayed where he was, watching how the team moved. No one cut corners. No one stood idle. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest work. Mindy came over to wipe down the counter. You sticking around for a while? She asked casually. Not long. Just checking in. She nodded. It's been better. A lot better. Feels like we're allowed to care now. He studied her face. She wasn't exaggerating, just saying it plainly. You ever think about stepping into lead training? He asked. She blinked. Me? I've only been here a few months. You've been consistent, reliable. You handle customers well. You pick up the slack when it counts. That's a foundation. Mindy looked down at the rag in her hands, then back up. I'd be interested. I just didn't think anyone noticed. I do. She gave a small nod, then turned to refill the napkin dispensers. At 11:30, Graham stepped outside for a moment. The streets were quiet, the sky clear. The same block that once held a night shift full of indifference and exhaustion now carried something different. Quiet pride. His phone buzzed. It was a message from the regional lead, an update on the other overnight locations. 2 still needed intervention. One was already showing signs of progress after a surprise visit the previous night. A third had reported a shift lead resigning after staff complaints were finally taken seriously. The work was far from done. Back inside, Gabriela had returned to the front. Thea was double-checking the milk fridge. Mindy was ringing up a delivery order. Everyone was focused. No one was watching the clock. Graham stepped back in. One last thing, he said to Gabriela. She looked up. If you ever see the culture slip again, if you feel pressure to tolerate something you know isn't right, you don't wait.
You call me.
Understood. No chain of command. No waiting for permission. Just call. She didn't hesitate. I will. He offered a brief nod to the team, then turned and walked out without ceremony. No one applauded. No one stopped working. That was exactly how he wanted it. Because when a workplace starts to heal, it doesn't happen with announcements. It happens when people stop surviving the job and start owning it. When they're finally allowed to expect better and are trusted to build it.